listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast and check us out online at beardedtheologians.com. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
This week on the Bearded Theologians, we're in the fourth week of our James conversation that we've had the last few weeks. And so, Zach, this week a little bit on conflict and a couple of little issues that we can talk about. How do you feel about what James responds to kind of conflict and conversations with people and with the law and all that great stuff?
Well, I don't know if it gives me any hope or makes me feel better that James is dealing with conflict as well, and we're still dealing with it today. But his words are pretty simple. He says, those conflicts and disputes among you, where do they come from? Do they not come from your cravings that are at war within you? And when I think back and kind of reflect upon the conflicts that I've had in my life and with various people, hindsight's 2021, not 2021, but 2020, whatever. It's late, and it's easy to go back and see like, I should have done this or that, but to look back on those and be like, oh, here's really why I was at conflict with that person. We either wanted different things, or they wanted something I had, or I wanted something they had. And, that kind of craving or coveting something, whether it be a job, money, something in that nature, it comes from within of that, man, I want that, so I'm going to do everything that I can to get that. And, it could even be something as not intangible as status or notoriety, but we just have that craving to do whatever, and so James gives us this maybe warning against it, but maybe a red flag for me of when you begin to feel this way. Here's where you're at. You're at war within yourself, and that kind of puts you in war with people. And you're going to be in conflict, from within and with the folks around you. And so, like I said, I don't know if that gives me hope or not, but it at least gives us something to point out that this has been a human issue for a really long time, and hopefully we can move forward. And James gives us some examples and some ways to move forward later on in the chapter here. But Matt, what do you think about conflict?
So as I'm thinking about this and thinking about, we're in chapter 4, we're talking about conflict. It a lot of times, where one or two or more persons gathered, there will be conflict. Mm-hmm. Whether it's playful conflict like you and I have versus Cardinals versus Rockies, or we find ourselves in the midst of conflict all the time. And whether that's intentional or unintentional, or and I think how we handle conflict matters. I think when we handle conflict with the hope of bringing peaceful resolution, and that may not be getting your way, but just coming to a peaceful resolution, we can find ourselves in a way that is very helpful. And what's our focus? Do we want to crave conflict? Do we have that kind of maybe mental health issue that's just something who we are? We have to have that in our lives, and the people that have to have that kind of conflict in their lives, they live very unhealthy lives. I've seen it in churches that I've been around and been in, is that there are people that have to have that kind of conflict, and that's always difficult to deal with, and especially as you're managing people and tending to people and getting people not to be in conflict and try to be together in Christ. But something that stuck out with me as you were talking, as I was reading before we hit record, was verse 11. Brothers and sisters, don't say evil things about each other. Whoever insults or criticizes a brother or sister insults or criticizes the law. If you find fault with the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge over it. There is only one lawgiver and judge. He is able to save, to destroy, but you who judge your neighbor, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, oh, wow.
You know, I had somebody ask me this week. It wasn't a church member. Matter of fact, she's actually Lutheran, and she asked me. She's like, "What do you think? What do you think about telling people they're going to hell?" And I was like, "Well, you know, we don't have a ton of time to get into this, but here's kind of the short answer. So that's I don't think that's my job. Uh, and I don't think that's your job. You know, that it's not our place to judge and tell people, uh, you know, be a definitive answer. You're going to hell. I don't think that's how grace works." And I said, Why do you ask?" And she said, "Well, I'm like you. That's the way I think. I think that that's the way grace works, and that we have the opportunity to accept grace." Um, all the way to the end. She's like, "But there's some folks in our community um, that do think that and think it's their job to tell folks they're going to hell and to judge them." And she's like, "How do I handle them?" And I was like, "Well, you love them." And show them that there's a different way, that there's a different way of thinking and going about sharing the gospel. Um, and mind you, this wasn't one of my church members, and it was a lady that I knew for all of maybe 15, 20 minutes. And she was searching for that answer in a time of conflict where she had run into this group of people. Um,
So our good friend Jerry Herships posted today on Facebook. Did you see the cool thing that he posted on Facebook today?
I'm sure I did.
Who judges more, Christians or
Oh yeah, I
non-Christians?
did see that.
And did you see my response?
I didn't look at any of them.
I responded that it's a situational deal and it's a contextual deal. That yes, there are some Christians that do judge a lot, and they're judgy people based off of certain ethics and certain things that cause them to judge. And they felt like they had that biblical authority by the way they interpret Scripture. But I also know non-Christians that judge just as harshly. They just don't have a biblical ethic or some kind of ethos about them that they can hang their hat on.
Right.
And so they both judge. Everybody judges. It's just it's one of the worst things in human nature that we have, and that's why I like that last line. But you who judge your neighbor, who are you?
Right.
And I really think we have to be careful when we judge, because you will. Don't say that you won't, because you will. You're judging us now.
Right.
And I think that we have to be. The question that we have to ask is: Are we being Christ-like in that kind of a conversation? When we have to use words that may be difficult and may cause conflict or may be a sense of judgment. But sometimes we have to make decisions that are judgmental decisions. Whether letting go of an employee or things like that, those are necessary. Judging people based off of certain things that are against you without ever getting to know the person or understanding where they're coming from, I have a hard time with that.
Right. Well, it comes back to, the kind of the beginning of the chapter here in, are you confronting people for conflict? Are you confronting people for resolution or reconciliation? And when it comes down to conflict, there's gonna be judgment there. When there's reconciliation or resolution, we're not going in there with an agenda other than love. And so, it's what's within when we come and have those conversations and approach people in those manners. Is it because there's something at war within us, or are we approaching it with love and grace?
Well, and that's where, like, verse 17, this is very harsh. It is a sin when someone knows the right thing to do and doesn't do it. How often do we hear people judging and we know they're not right, or we know that they've got misinformation, and we don't call them out on it, and we let it slide, or we don't correct them and say, no, that's not right. And man, like verse 17 will, I'm preaching on the 10 Commandments this week. We're in our 4th week of Moses, and like, that's a great line to tag into my sermon. If
Right.
you
Right.
know the right thing to do and you're not doing anything about it, it's a horrible thing.
Right. Well, even when it comes down to us and we have those moments of, well, just this one time.
Yeah.
We'll justify it once. We know it's wrong, but it's not that bad. That's just as bad.
And so I guess the question for this week would be, we'd like for you to think about your relationships and think about how you're treating people. And those moments you're judging, maybe step back and say, is this worthwhile? Is this something I need to be asking people? Is this something that needs to be done? Is this going to correct a behavior or make people better? Or are we just being jerks? And I think that's a good thing for you to reflect on. Please reach out to us, have conversations with us. We've been having some really good conversations with the series. We want to encourage you to keep those up through Facebook or through our website. We give you thanks for listening and being a part of us. Just go buy some great gear. We've got great gear. I'm here at Church of the Resurrection this week, and I've gotten a lot of great compliments about our swag and just our unshameless plugging, and we have no shame in our game. And give a shout out to Adam Hamilton. He has a sticker now, and maybe in the near future we can get him on. And Sarah Heath, you rocked it today, and we're looking forward to having her on here in the future. And like we said, we want to provide a space for good theological dialogue and theological conversation. And if you have an idea for a blog, or maybe you think you would like to be on the show with us, just shoot us an email, or reach out to us through Facebook. We'd love to hear from you all. We know that we have a few fans out there, and for those of you that are listening, you're awesome. Just tell yourself that you are awesome. There are 2 dudes that think you're awesome because you know us, and we give you thanks for that. And just enjoy the conversation and really think about your relationships and don't judge, because it's just a bad thing. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. We hope you've enjoyed listening, and we hope that you share our content online through Facebook and social media. And we hope that you check out our Beardcast store at beardedtheologians.com and pick up some great Bearded Theologians gear. We hope you have a good day.
What's funny is I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt. I'm like, can you see my tattoo every week? Oh no, I'm not wearing sleeves.